Who are the best early bets for the win total picks for the 2020 NFL season? It's time to break down the NFL futures right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Come to the site. We have some good information there for different non-NFL sports going into the weekend. We have the PGA Championship underway. We also have the Preakness going on, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can get on that action through BetOnline later in the show. We are going to shift gears a little bit here from fantasy football talk and talk a little NFL futures, a little gambling here, crossover on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're going to look at some teams that I think their win total over-unders that are set right now after the schedule came out or a bit on the low side here that we can try to exploit. So this is from the early feelings here of what these teams will do versus their schedule here in 2022. And we'll do the flip side of this to close the week on Friday. We'll look at the teams that may have inflated over-under win totals where you can exploit and look for some value there and going below their totals. Here we're going to go above the team's totals here, and we'll talk about 6 teams on both sides of the equation. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. All right, let us dive right into a couple teams that I was thinking about that were right there on the cusp. You have the Chiefs right there at 10.5 and the Bills 11.5 around that win total. The Chiefs, in some places you can find them at 11.5. The Bills have been pretty steady at 11.5. Now, the Chiefs are a tough one because their schedule is pretty difficult. The Bills also have a pretty loaded schedule, including starting in week 1 at the Rams. So they have to start with the Super Bowl champions right away there, as they are the potential Super Bowl favorites, however. So you look at this division, I think the Patriots are about where they are. I don't know if they're going to bounce up too much here. They've had some defensive losses. The Jets and Dolphins, I think the Jets are going to overachieve a little bit. We'll talk about them a little bit more there later in the show. The Dolphins, I think, will underachieve a little bit. So we'll talk about them on Friday. So lines up for the Bills here, staying pretty steady with their win total. It really comes down to, can we get them to 12-5 this year? And yeah, I think it's a pretty comfortable margin. I think they're a little bit better bet for the Chiefs. I would just simply avoid the Chiefs. They had that slow start last year and were able to get to their over eventually. But if that happens again against a tougher schedule, it's going to be difficult. So I think they're right around that win total. Where you look at the Bills, the Chiefs are a team to avoid, but the Bills at 11.5, we like it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Do you think this is a 12-5 team, even through navigating a difficult schedule, including the champs right away? I think the Bills should also come out of the game in a good situation here because, again, it's the Rams, but they don't have that home field advantage. The Bills fans are going to circle that date and try to be out there in Los Angeles. We know that. Those are tickets that are easy to come by. So there might be a home field advantage field to that. The Bills also are strong there when they're playing in Orchard Park. So, again, 12 wins, it really doesn't need too much to get there, given how talented this team is. They added Von Miller, so Von Miller is going to be motivated in that first game against the Rams. So if they can get through that in a couple of tough games, if they can end up going right now 5-1 in the division and then win this first game, then you're already there, halfway there with the 6 wins. So I think that is definitely a potential here for the Bills, how good they can be offensively and defensively. This is why they're a big favorite. So 11.5 is pretty conservative. I like their chances to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and that means that's going to require at least 12 wins to stay out of the Chiefs. So feel a little bit better about the Bills than the Chiefs. I do like the Chiefs as well because of their consistency and how they deliver, but the Chiefs facing a tougher schedule playing in the AFC West. The Bills, the advantage there is playing in the NFC East, or AFC East, I should say. Playing the NFC East, it would have been easy to go over 11.5, but it's still pretty favorable playing in this weaker division. They're out there on the East Coast. Another team we'll talk about that I think is a bit underrated with their win total. They also have a very favorable strength of schedule. The Cowboys do start with a doozy immediately in week 1 against the Buccaneers, but they can prey on that NFC East. I got a little ahead of myself. For the Bills working on the AFC East, the Cowboys get to work on the NFC East. Now, the Commanders should be a little bit better with Carson Wentz, but how much better, I'm not sure. The Eagles, that could be the challenge here, but you would think there's at least 4 wins available for the Cowboys. And keep in mind, we're looking for one win less than the Bills here. They just have to get to 11-6 and win this division. I think the Cowboys are a strong favorite to win this division. So overall, yeah, they're in great shape here in Dallas with that 10.5 win total. So I love it. That's one you can exploit pretty early here. I'm very confident there with Dak Prescott kind of settled in the right offense. I think the changes on their offensive line are going to be positive here. Actually, they lost La'el Collins and Connor Williams, but they're going to be a better running team. I think they're going to be more streamlined with their 12 personnel and playing off their wide receivers. So I think they have their true offensive identity with Dak Prescott and Kellen Moore. They're pretty established with Dan Quinn and that defense, a little bit more help there. So overall, you look at the Cowboys, even with a few personnel losses, including Amari Cooper and Randy Gregory and those offensive linemen I mentioned, they should still be in control of the NFC East, and they'll be in the mix there to go after the number 1 seed. It doesn't really help them as much because the home field advantage is not great in Dallas, but they'll be in that mix there as well as some other teams, including the Packers, Buccaneers, the usual suspects. We'll talk more about the Green Bay's chances in our second segment. We're going to break down 4 more teams overall that I like to exceed their over-under win totals at this point that are set for the NFL futures, where we look at sports books. We'll get into those. Before we do that, I got to tell you about a new puff flavor from Built Bar. It is called Brownie Batter. I love brownies, and you know what I love more? Brownie batter. Sometimes I eat the batter just while I'm making the brownies. Imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula clean and get your protein in for the day, and some really good protein here to start your day. You're in luck because Built has a new creation, and this one is better than ever. The Brownie Batter Puff. You heard me right. This puff takes protein bars to a whole new level, and they're available right now only at Built.com. If you tried the Built Puffs yet, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Built Puffs are chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bars. That's right, delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate with 140 calories, 17 grams of protein. That's a lot to begin your day or have in the middle of the day or at night. Whenever you need the protein, Built Puffs are there for you, especially with their new flavor, Brownie Batter. Delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate, however you get it. So it is great. Puffs are the perfect pick, really, for any time of day. Pick you up anytime you want there. Built Puffs are all covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built, you get to eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And they're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides a ton of health benefits. The Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you're eating a protein bar. No need to pinch yourself. This is real life. Go to Built.com to get the Brownie Batter Puffs now. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, it is time to continue the show looking at our NFL futures. We're focusing on win totals here. These are teams that we like to go over their current sets there across Sportsbook. You want to get the best value. Obviously, you want to get as low as you can with these teams there. So we talked about the Bills and Cowboys in the first segment. We teased about the Packers. The Packers get that 0.5 jump up from the Cowboys and have straight up 11 as their attached number here in 2022. Now, the Packers, another tough schedule, but they've been very consistent here with their 13 wins under Matt LaFleur. So you got a 2-win window there if they can duplicate that. People might say, get to 13 wins, but you, again, would expect they can still finish 12-5. One of the more favorable schedules playing in the NFC North. They got some other breaks as well throughout their schedule. So really, Packers are set up nicely, much like the Cowboys here to exploit things. So I think it's going to come down to the Cowboys and Packers for the number 1 seed in the NFC. And again, you feel good about 12 wins being in play, just like with the Bills and needing 12 wins to finish ahead of the Chiefs and Bengals and maybe other contenders that arise there in the AFC. So it's Aaron Rodgers. They're consistent. They're going to find ways to win. It's different with their offense, but they'll be more efficient running the ball with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. We know that was a big part of what they did just a few years ago to get the 13 wins. Rodgers is going to find guys to put up his numbers here in 2022. So I feel really confident here about the Packers and Cowboys. Again, two of the better NFC teams. They're going to be well positioned for the playoffs. And again, benefits of the schedule, and it starts with their own divisions and having those 6 games that really establish a foundation. Again, the Packers can get almost halfway there in playing the rebuilding Vikings now with a new coach. The Lions are still in rebuilding mode, and the Bears also breaking a new coach. So the Packers have the most stability by far in this division. And that's going to help them not only rack up the wins inside the division, but have more confidence with nice breaks in the schedule late. They have their bye deep into the season. They opted not to take a bye after playing the Giants in London, so that's also a break here. So they cross over and play a good chunk of the weaker teams here in the NFC this season as well. So that lines up really nicely between division and the outside opponents. Packers and Cowboys have it really nice here in 2022. Now we're going to go on the lower end of things here. We'll exploit a team that is pretty low to me, is the Jets at 5.5. Now there's a lot of buzz about the Dolphins. That's a hint to a team that we're going to talk about on Friday's show being a little bit overrated. Jets are underrated. They had a great offseason. Zach Wilson is healthy. They have 3 legitimate receivers now, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, and now the rookie Garrett Wilson. You got your 2 veteran tight ends as well as your rookie tight end there. So you got C.J. Uzomah, Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert. A lot of extra help there. You should also have Elijah Vera Tucker and Mekhi Becton being healthy here. You got Laken Tomlinson to that offensive line as well. So the Jets are looking really good overall with their offensive improvements. That's where a lot is going to happen. Then we know defensively they've got a lot more juice as well, all the way to the back, and they've got more sauce as well with Ahmad Gardner back there. So a lot of good players there. DJ Reed was also added from the Seahawks, a very good schematic player there for Robert Saleh. So I'm really feeling it. If Wilson is healthy, a lot of things are there with a good support system. I like 3/5 of their offensive line a lot between Becton and Vera Tucker and Tomlinson. So they're set up pretty nicely here, the Jets, to put up some points here. And again, a lot of the emphasis has been on the Dolphins, but it comes down to Tua Tagovailoa taking advantage of things. And I think the Jets, with some of their investments, might actually be better defensively right now than the Dolphins in some areas, in key areas. So that's why I do like the Jets here at 5.5 going there. So 2 teams in green that I like. The Packers at 11 wins and going over that. And the Jets, half that total at 5.5. So all you need from the Jets is 6 and 11. I think you can get that from the Jets. I think they're going to improve. I think they're a well-coached team with Robert Saleh and Michael LaFleur. Good organization there with Joe Douglas. They've invested a lot in this team, both through draft capital and free agent spending. They're going to be better. And the Dolphins did upgrade as well, a lot offensively, but I think the Jets did more all-round for their team. I think I trust Zach Wilson a little bit more, frankly, with these weapons overall than I trust Tua Tagovailoa, and you don't have to have as many wins here to get it done with the Jets. So again, 6 and 11, we're not asking a lot here for the Jets, where the Dolphins and some other teams, you're looking for quite a bit of exceeding expectations here in 2022 to come through. All right, there's a look at a couple more teams there. The Packers, Jets, 2 teams in green. It is easy being green with some of the things on the schedule here for 2022. So Bills, Cowboys, Packers, Jets. So we have a couple NFC teams, couple teams from the AFC East. We'll wrap up with looking at 2 AFC teams outside of the division that can have an impact and really help you cash in here on the win total NFL futures in 2022. Before we do that, we've been talking about betting, and futures are here. Next season's NFL futures, you can find them. You can find out the action that you need to get in on with the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs. We know NBA is into the conference championships. NHL is 1 round behind. Major League Baseball is looking very good here as we creep toward the All-Star break, get into the May and the Memorial Day, and a lot of good baseball action. We know who the better teams are and where the separation is, so that helps. And then we know we're going to have big fights, whether it's UFC or boxing matches that we can look at here to get in on the action. That's going to tell you to go to BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number 1 source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments here for all these sports. We also have a couple of big events going on this weekend. I mentioned the PGA Championship and the Preakness. And don't forget, again, those win totals, NFL futures, as well as looking at the early Super Bowl odds. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use the mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, it's time to take a look at a couple teams that I think are a bit underrated here that are in that medium range. So we went on the high end with the Bills, Cowboys, and Packers. We went low with the Jets. Now we're going to go into the middle here, and two teams that are benefiting from the schedule. There are two teams, actually, one surprisingly finished last place last year in their division in the AFC. One was a very disappointing second. And the Baltimore Ravens, they're at 9.5 wins. Remember, this team was just below 500 last year with all their injuries and issues that they had right out of the gate with their running game. Then Lamar Jackson missed time. They're at 9.5. So you're asking the Ravens to improve by 2 games here. And I think they can improve by 2 games with all their better bill of health here. You'll have J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards back. You got definitely an improved impact defense there with Kyle Hamilton on the back end. You got that offensive lineman you needed as well in Tyler Linderbaum. So the Ravens are going to be very effective running the ball. I think they're going to have an addition by subtraction by moving Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman taking over as the number 1 there. Tough schedule for their offense a little bit, but their defense is in good shape. And they get that last place schedule. That's going to help offset their tough times playing the other teams in the AFC North. So really like the last place schedule. That it carries over into that extra NFC game that they have. But yeah, Ravens are looking really good. I love that 9.5. I only need a 2-win improvement from last year. I still think they're a very good team. So all you're asking for the Ravens is a jump from 8-9 to 10-7. I think that's pretty reasonable, and I think they're a strong bet to get an AFC wildcard. The AFC is loaded, so you also have to look at it that way that you're going to probably have to get 10 wins to get in the playoffs here, and the 9 is not going to be good enough. So that should also be an indication that's a good way to go. If you feel confident about the Ravens and Lamar Jackson having a big rebound season with John Harbaugh, he's a strong track record getting the playoffs. So you think going to last place and being a game under 500 is an anomaly for the Ravens. So you like that at 9.5 there for sure. Exploit it. Look, there's some other teams that are appealing in that division. The Steelers have some interest as well there. And I would avoid the Bengals and Browns. The Bengals are a bit inflated, but they also have a status of being the Super Bowl runners-up and the AFC champions. You also have the Browns. We don't know where we're going to get with Deshaun Watson. They're off the board in a lot of cases. So really, it comes down to Ravens and Steelers where we want to find the action. Ravens don't have that quarterback transition that the Steelers have there with Kenny Pickett. So you have to go with the Baltimore Ravens there at 9.5 wins there out of that division. All right, the last team we'll talk about plays in the AFC South, and they finished behind the Titans. They had that disappointing ending with Carson Wentz. It caused them to move on from Carson Wentz, trade him to the Commanders, make that deal with the Falcons to acquire Matt Ryan. It is the Indianapolis Colts, so we'll talk about them in detail here. And again, they finished second in the division, so don't get the schedule necessarily that the Jaguars and Texans get to exploit, but they get to play the Jaguars and Texans twice each. You figure they will split with the Titans this year as the Colts have improved, I think, overall. I think Matt Ryan is their type of quarterback, throws it back to Phillip Rivers from a couple of years ago. So, again, all you're looking for here is 10-7 from the Colts. Not much of an improvement from last year. Defense, very good. Offensive line, still very sturdy. Jonathan Taylor has some help now in the backfield, including Philip Lindsay. This is going to be a strong rushing team. We know that, setting up the quarterback pretty well. I also like Alec Pierce coming in there to give them a little bit more speed and big playability with Michael Pittman Jr. in the offense. And they're going to still use the tight ends effectively in Indianapolis. So Frank Reich's a good coach, just like John Harbaugh. If everything is lining up well, he's going to make full use of that team. And the Titans also could take a step back here if Ryan Tannehill has a bit of a hangover there from the playoffs. So maybe create a transition in Tennessee where it goes from Ryan Tannehill to Malik Willis ahead of 2023. Well, the Colts we know are going to be one season locked into Matt Ryan and get the most out of him. Matt Ryan is a little bit hard to trust here because he's a little older and his arm strength is diminishing. But what helps you there is that he's a very good play action quarterback. Frank Reich is a good pocket passer kind of whisperer here. So that's going to help. And playing off the play action of Jonathan Taylor in the strong running game, I think Matt Ryan is going to make fewer mistakes by taking chances. He's going to play more within the framework of the offense that we saw with Phillip Rivers. So that's going to be helpful. Carson Wentz was a little bit improvisy. He put up some numbers, but he was a bit boomer bust with the way he produced here for the Colts. So they have back to their quarterback that gives them a comfort level. You look at Andrew Luck, he was the traditional pocket passer, but had some athleticism. Then he went to Phillip Rivers, and they had pretty good success with him in the one season. So, again, teams are creatures of habit. They want to go with something familiar to work out pretty well. And definitely the Colts saw that here with Matt Ryan having that profile that they like, and they're very confident what he can do. Good rejuvenated season. We know that he's best operating when the situation helps him with the running game and the offensive line and the offensive concepts. And Frank Reich has that. The one downside, again, Matt Ryan usually needs a little bit while to embrace the system, but I think he'll be motivated as well from the Falcons kind of moving on from him. He was ready to move on when they were even thinking about trading for Deshaun Watson. So the writing was on the wall there. So he's going to want to prove the Falcons wrong. He's going to be personally motivated here, and he's going to have a good support system that he, quite frankly, didn't have in Atlanta beyond the rookie tight end Kyle Pitts last year. He's going to have a tight end help with the schemes, the wide receiver help, and the running game, and everything lines up here. And the defense, again, Colts defense pretty solid with DeForest Buckner fronting it here for this team, even without Matt Eberflus and now Nick Sirianni from the past 2 years. I think it's going to line up pretty well here for the Colts to have a rebound season. We're just looking for 10-7 with Baltimore and Indianapolis. Two teams, of course, tied with a lot of history here. But, yeah, definitely looking at 10 wins is a nice way to cash in here with those teams. There you have it. There's a look at the teams that I think have low over-under win totals set up here that you can go over and get some good value here at this part of the offseason. Remember, these numbers can change, go up and down, so be wary of that. So this is a good thing to maybe get in on the action here while the numbers are more favorable with these particular 6 teams. Now we're going to look at the unfavorable numbers there to close the week here on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this is Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll check you out to close the week with our under picks there for NFL Futures 2022 on Friday.